Welcome, everybody. So glad you guys could join us today for the Jerry Rig podcast. My name is Jerry Suhrstedt, and I am a Salesforce consultant and business analyst. And today I'm really, really excited, actually kind of extra excited because I love this whole world of process and processes and improving processes. And one of the tools that we use for processing or creating processes so that people can understand where we're going with our concepts is called process diagramming. We're going to dive into that. And one of the kings of that is a guy by the name of Ian Gotts. He's one of the founders of Elements.cloud. And he's all deep into this UPN thing, but he loves all levels of process diagrams and all flavors and platforms. So we're going to talk about that. He's going to be my guest today. So hang tight, and we're going to jump right in this in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
This is the Jerry Rigged Podcast, your no-nonsense knowledge base for business technology, marketing, and analytics. And now your host, Jerry Suhrstedt.
So it's just another boring Tuesday, and we're going to try to spice things up a little bit. I got my buddy here, Ian Gotts. How's it going, Ian?
Hey, pretty good. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. So one of the things we're going to talk about today primarily is this whole thing called process mapping and process diagramming. And really, for those that are just really, really new to this, process diagramming and process mapping really is just kind of a visual way to describe processes, right? So, for instance, let's say you need Bob to pick up a piece of paper, walk across the room, make a copy of it, and bring it back to you. You could, in theory, draw a picture of Bob, and you could draw a picture of the paper and try to describe those steps in that process. Or you could use process diagramming and mapping. And in this world, you've probably heard the generic term flowcharts. Well, there are tons and tons of types of flowcharts. And then depending on the industry that you're in, electrical, carpentry, technology, they all have kind of their own little flavors of flow charting and whatnot. In the world that we live in, the Salesforce world, at least the one I use the most, is kind of a combination of BPMN and UPN, usually what people are typically asking for. But once I learned UPN, I was really drawn towards it because of the simplicity of the platform and or I don't know what you would call it, the modality, the what's the official term for the different types of processes? Diagramming.
The activity steps, the notations.
The notations. Okay. So once I started learning UPN, it's like a light bulb went off. And not that BPMN is a bad thing. It's not at all. It comes in handy. But with UPN, first of all, in this day and age, we're always trying to describe things on a computer, on a Zoom call, on a Teams call. You know, we don't have a lot of times the ability to have a big, huge room with a whiteboard that goes all the way around the room, and we can start a process and run it all across, and everybody in the room can see what we're doing. So we're doing these on little monitors, and UPN accounts for that and allows you to deal with that. So, Ian, go ahead and talk to us. Where are you from? Where were you born and raised? And how did you get into all this?
Well, okay. I don't think anybody needs to know the full history, but I think I drew my first process map in 1986 when I was working for Accenture, where we were about to map out how an ERP system worked for a big aircraft manufacturer. So I think that's 38 years ago, and I've been on my soapbox ever since.
Oh my
trying
God.
to get people to understand and how to do business analysis better so we can build better systems. I think we worked out if people build the wrong stuff, because we haven't done decent analysis, it's a $1 trillion issue. So it's a big problem. And again, that's not all Salesforce, but Salesforce has the same sorts of problems, which is it's easy to build. And unless we understand what we should be building, how it supports our end users, which is, again, understanding the business process, then we're going to start building the wrong stuff. Another statistic is 50% of all custom objects and fields that get created never get used, which suggests that, again, we're not doing sufficient analysis before we get going. So again, I'm 20 years as a Salesforce customer, 30 plus years on my soapbox saying, we need to do process better. I'm still here, and we've still got a lot more people to convince, which is why we've got this podcast.
That's cool. That's awesome. So where do you currently live now? I know you're originally from the UK, correct?
Yeah. I'm based in San Francisco. So I'm actually UK and US citizen. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So happy to be in San Francisco, intending to spend my time here, which is good.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about why people use BPMN, why people use UPN. And then after that, I'm going to get a little bit into like kind of how you access it. Okay. BPMN is pretty straightforward. You can get just about any drawing platform from Visio to Lucid, and you can draw diagrams and charts using BPMN flavors, shapes, and all that. But you can't so much with UPN. So let's talk about that piece of it.
Okay, so I think about UPN again. I don't want this to be turned into my standards better than your standards conversation, which I think where it goes. I don't really care what you call it. What I'm trying to do is get people to make sure that we're addressing what the real need is. And I think you, in the introduction, you made a point, which is life is different now. So we want executive buy-in. We want executives to go, okay, we need to drive this process in a different way because of the competitive advantage. So, COVID taught us that the only constant is change. So therefore, we need something which reflects we can change and get people to work in a different way relatively quickly. Now, we've all got short attention spans, and therefore we need something which is easy for people to understand and get engaged with. The other thing, it's cross-functional. So processes aren't one silo. They're different departments are getting involved in things. The other thing, a lot of us are remote. We're having this conversation, we're completely remote. Teams are remote, which means, as you said, we need a format or a style of mapping which is engaging, quick and easy to use, visible on one screen, but also manages to cover quite a wide scope of process. It could be everything from quote to cash. So how do we get all that on one screen, but still get enough level of detail to actually, so people understand what they need to do? And that's really where UPN was born from, which was that simplicity, but very much an end user focus. And I think most people think about flow charting. Some people think about BPMN. BPMN came probably more out of a more technical world. So it's got 300 different symbols, and all those different shapes mean something different because it was trying to almost build pseudocode. And so you could hit a button and it would probably turn itself into an application. I think with the advent of things like low code, or certainly if you're in the Salesforce space where you've got Flow, you've got Apex, which is a bit of programming, but with Flow, you can do a lot. We don't need to draw a diagram that's really complicated, then hit a button and create code. Actually, the real need in the Salesforce world is how do I get, RevOps, how do I get my sales leaders engaged in what the correct sales process is? How do I make sure the RevOps team are relating to the sales team? So it's more around communication and understanding, which is why I think the simpler approach is working. I think that just to finish with one point, this is not brand new. I wrote a book. Here we go. Go here. Common Approach, Uncommon Results. That was 2004 we wrote that. That was basically talking about the principles of UPN. And we've got a ton of customers from the company I ran then at a very senior level. It's the global standard at Nestle. It's the global standard at Chevron. So this is not a funny little thing that someone's been talking about for the last few years. This is 20 years old. And the history probably goes all the way back to the 1960s in terms of F0.
That kind of surprised me as well. Just from my own process going through, I first learned, like in high school, I learned how to flow chart, and you learn all the basics about, the diamond and what it's used for and the box and all these different shapes. After a while, you kind of start remembering. And then when I started kind of flowing into BPMN, I started learning that, and then I realized, oh my God, there's a lot of shapes here. I'm never going to remember all these. So you tend to lean in with about, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 different shapes that you kind of tend to use all the time. And then I started getting into swim lanes and resources. And at a certain level, I don't know, it just seemed like it never quite fully clicked with me. And I know it's not that complicated, but I would look at these swim lanes and my head would just kind of spin going, okay, if this happens, then I got to go down to Bob. Then I got to go back up to Susie. And then I remember I started diving in one day, and I can't remember why I did, but I heard of this thing called UPN. Actually, I think I saw it on Trailhead, and I started diving into it. I'm like, what is this? And I think the part that really kind of had me spinning around for a while was because I went back to Lucid, and I'm going, where is the UPN shapes in here? They got BPMN and they got a bajillion different, different processes and shapes and whatnot. Where is UPN? So I left that. Then I just kept researching UPN. Why do I keep seeing this company called Cloud, Elements.cloud. Then I would go to the website and it's like, okay, that doesn't make sense. I can't draw anything with that. It wasn't like clear to me. Then I would go back to Lucid and I was just bouncing. Then I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to deep dive in this because this process seems so simple. This fits with how I think. So then once I learned to set up an account with Elements.cloud, then you get a free little area where you can go in and create in practice and play around with UPN processes. Now that I've done it, it's just like, oh man, like it's like the heavens opened up. And it's not, a BPMN bad. BPMN is just a different way to do it. And if you're creating processes, that's the main thing. But you can take UPN and you can do other stuff with it besides just look at a picture.
Yeah, and so let me why don't I share a screen and let's just so we go look through just a few what we're talking about. So, that's a UPN diagram. So if you can throw it up on the screen for me.
Yep.
There we go. There's a UPN diagram, and all of that makes sense to the person who wrote it. Often the problem is the person who wrote it is not the person who needs to understand it.
Exactly.
One of our team, Walter Brill, said, a picture paints 1,000 words, but if you need 1,000 words to explain it, the picture probably doesn't work.
Yeah, good point.
Processes are complicated. I get that. The devil is in the detail. So therefore, we need to make sure that people understand how stuff works. That was a photograph I took at a client where it was in a boardroom and they were asking the senior execs to walk around and sign it off. That's not realistic. There's a flow chart. I would say it's not a very good flow chart, and I'll pick up a couple of reasons in a moment. But you've got the idea of swim lanes and diamonds and so on. That same, I think there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are probably 19 boxes on there. That same flow chart as a process diagram is that. So that's a UPN diagram. And the reason I want to leave that up on screen is because there are 3 or 4 things that I want to highlight, which are what we call them UPN standards. But if you applied them to any mapping, it would make the mapping better. So a couple of things. Number 1, every activity starts with a verb. Request, resolve, test, analyze. Okay? That means that it's action oriented. It's not marketing. It's not sales. It's not proposal. It's actually moving through a process. The other thing is left to right. And the eye naturally flows left to right from unhappy customer to happy customer. And the idea you've got a resource on there rather than putting things in a swim lane means we're not laying the boxes out so that they fit in the swim lanes. We're laying them out so it feels like a natural flow from left to right. So
what I like about it is each box with this action, it has the resource contained within it. So it's very, very simple and obvious. Here's the action. Here is the resource that's going to do the action.
Yeah,
simple.
And it could be systems as well. It could be Salesforce. It could be Jira. Well, it doesn't really matter.
Yes.
So that's the next thing. You'll notice there are only about 8 or 10 boxes on a screen because, again, we're trying to keep this simple. So therefore, we have a drill down. So if I want to understand how to do test issue, I can drill down to the next level of detail, and that will be more detail around testing the issue. And there's no limit to the number of levels that you can go down. So therefore, you're getting the simplicity of going, okay, I kind of get this. Oh, okay, how do we test an issue? And you see the issue has got an issue coming in, and actually there's a decision being made there. Cannot produce the issue, can reproduce the issue. So essentially, test issue was in our flowchart was a diamond and a process. So again, we're simplifying it because we're saying test issue, there is a discussion, a decision made. How do I make the decision? Well, if I want to know, I could drill down, or maybe if there's a paperclip, I could link to some notes that say, how do I do things?
Hey, just to interrupt here, one of our folks online said that, is there a visual? I hear audio, but the video is just a white screen. I'm monitoring LinkedIn Live right now, and the actual what's coming out the other side of LinkedIn is actually what we're seeing here. So, John, there might be another issue on your side. Maybe refresh your screen or re-log into LinkedIn, but it seems to be streaming just fine.
Sorry about that. Yes, it makes it if I'm pointing at things and he's got a white screen, makes life a bit hard. I'll do the next through in the medium of dance. I'll do the next bit of the anyway. So we said activity boxes start with a verb. You've got a resource on the bottom, so we don't have to put boxes on swim lanes in certain places. A quick side note: if you've got a box that actually has 3 different resources on it, so how do you put it on all 3 swim lanes? I mean, it gets quite complicated.
Yes,
to put things on swim lanes, and you spend more time trying to worry about laying it out so it works for the notation than it actually does works for the person who's reading it.
But with UPN, you have your box, and that particular step is associated with your resources.
Correct.
Because they're right there. And the other piece that I appreciate so much is if you're using BPMN, you got to run it around the room, but we're on a computer monitor, so you can't. Correct. So instead of being stretched out across, 15 different computer monitors, they're stacked. They're
Correct.
like pieces of paper stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
Each of the steps.
So one of the clients I can think of had 10,000 diagrams in their process map.
Oh my God.
Well, yeah,
on a BPMN?
No, these were all UPN diagrams.
Oh, okay. So they had how many layers of drill downs did they have?
Probably some areas went down 5 or 6 levels, but it was an investment bank. It was a bank. So they had retail banking, investment banking, wealth management. But again, you need to get highly regulated organizations. You need to get right down to, how do I issue a credit card? What are the detailed steps? What are the, how do I issue a checkbook if you're in the US? So those are very detailed. How do I do anti-money laundering? They're very detailed steps. So you're getting from the top level, which is called onboarding customer, and you may go down 4 or 5 levels. And what's really interesting about the hierarchy, and again, I'm sidetracking a bit, and I'll come back to the standard in a moment, is the top level is really important, because the top level is setting the overall way the company thinks about themselves. So we are going to design product, make product, sell product, support products, or we'll think about it. So that top level really drives the intent of the business. Those intermediate levels really is how I get from that top level intent down to the people doing the work.
So if step 1 is market product and step 2 is sell product on this high level, then in theory, and I'm just kind of confirming what you're saying or trying to make sure I understand, you could click on market product, and then it would be a second set of steps that shows all the top level steps for marketing the product. Then
Correct.
You could click on those and go deeper and then get more detail.
Correct. Until you get down to the very bottom level in market product, which is, how do I run a podcast? This is how you sign up. This is the script. So it can be quite granular. So at the highest level, we're setting the overall approach. On the lowest level, we've actually got the detailed activities. It's almost the training manual, the instructions. And what's interesting about the drill down approach, and if we just look at this box called test issue, let's pick this one, resolve technical support request. The next level down underneath resolve technical support request must have non-sales issue coming in, new issue coming out, and issue resolved coming out. So what's happening is that we're naturally setting the scope for the lower level based on the inputs of the high level. So you've got some congruency between the very top and the bottom. We don't have, the way I always describe it is, if you've just got a bunch of diagrams you've done at the lower levels, you've got a bunch of jigsaw pieces and you don't have a picture of the box or how it gets assembled. Here, it gets assembled all the way down. So you know that all the lower level activities have to be driving the highest level the highest level process.
That makes sense. Yeah. And, the thing is, I don't know, to me, it just feels like, given the fact that while remote is not quite as big a thing as it was during COVID, remote is not going away completely. It's going to be here forever. So given that fact that you have teams in different parts of the world that have to collaborate, to me, when it comes to process mapping, especially a large, complicated one, you're kind of sort of relegated a little bit to UPN.
Well, you say remote. I mean, it doesn't have to be remote. We've got, I know clients who've got, the team is spread they're all in an office, but they're in 15 different offices. So they are naturally distributed, but they're not working from home necessarily, but they are working in offices. So again, you've still got the same problem, which is organizations wanting to cross collaboration to make sure process works.
So I guess BPMN, you can also drill down according to Manir.
You can.
He loves UPN. So can you drill down using Lucidchart?
Well, okay. You think of it as a drawing notation. You could say, using any diagramming tool, okay, box 7 has got a lower level box. So there's another diagram somewhere on the hard drive, which is box 7. So
it's just like a link. It's like a website.
The diagramming tool is you end up with lots and lots of diagrams and then managing all of those. So the first one is, where can I find them? But the next one is managing version control of all of this. So if I've signed off the top level, what happens to the lower levels? So there are a few applications around, ourselves, Score, Aris, that actually are able to manage hierarchies of diagrams. Now you can do it. You can do anything. You could do UPN on a piece of paper. It's just the difficulty of managing all of that and managing the hierarchies.
Well, and it's not unlike a website. It's just links to other areas. And I'm sure UPN probably, utilizes some of that same hierarchy. I would think anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things which are, I think, are important. It doesn't matter whether it's UPN or anything else, whether it's flowcharts, UPN, BPMN. Something I see all the time, which is a huge challenge, and which is why people get things wrong, and that is the lines and the text. Okay. I was talking to a senior guy at Toyota who says, the most important thing on the process map are the lines, not the boxes. He said, I know what I do. That's my box. I don't know what the handoff is to the next person. So when I look at flowcharts and I see, so I said that's not a very good flowchart. The problem is that there's no text on these lines. Yeah. When's that thing finished? So if I go back to my process diagram, I know that this resolve sales request support is when it's resolved. We can now have a discussion about what resolve means. Does it mean it's tested and it's in production, or does it mean we know what the problem is and we're going to put it into production? So a lot of the discussion when you're looking at these workshops should be debating what the definition of some of these terms are, because that's where the ambiguity kicks in. People go, so if I think about the classic example would be, marketing passing off a lead to sales. So when is it, what do you think a qualified lead is from a sales perspective? Oh, they're just about to purchase. Marketing's version of a qualified lead is they walk past my scanner, the stand, and I manage to scan them.
Right.
If we don't have agreement on what that is, that's where the breakdowns happen.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. So Patrick is asking, he would really like to use PM, but he works at a large company with heavy system security, which tells me they're more than likely a Microsoft shop.
Yep.
And he only has access to Visio. And so he's saying that it doesn't support UPN.
Well, it does. I mean, you can draw a Visio diagram. Using Visio, you could draw the picture you've got on screen. Okay.
Well, you'd have to create your own shapes, right?
Well, it's only a square. I mean, it's a square with a square below it. I mean, how hard is that? You can do that in Visio. Absolutely. then what you need to do is you probably need an Excel spreadsheet sitting alongside it to manage, okay, this is level box 1. If I drill down on test issue, this is 1.7. If I drill down on box 5, it's 1.5. So somehow I need to track the different Visio diagrams and make sure that when I draw box 5, it has the inputs and the outputs are consistent. But you can do that. It's more effort.
Well, I think the question I have for Patrick is, so you can draw UPN maps using Ian's website, Elements.cloud. I mean, I'm assuming that you have access to the internet. You're just going to a website. It's not like you're installing software or anything.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Makes sense.
If you think about UPN, and we've got some of the largest companies on the planet using UPN and through a browser. So yes, when it's.
So anyway, Walter works with you.
He does. Walter's the guy who he and I were together at the last company. He's a process guru, just loves this stuff as I do.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
so anyway, straight from the horse's mouth there, Patrick. They take security very seriously. So you can read that up you can give that to your IT department, trust.elements.cloud. So give that a shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's, but I think the other issue again with, Paul's just said Visio supports a type of drill down. It doesn't. Okay. The concept of a drill down is that you can connect diagrams, and you can you could create two diagrams, and you could create an HTML link between them, or a URL link between them, I guess. The issue, and again, this is not about tools. I don't want to get into that, but the point is, it's how I'm trying to get people to do a better job of mapping processes, and then make it easy to manage. So the other interesting thing is the last company we set up was in 1997. There are customers who are using that product and have mapped processes. Those process diagrams are still being used 24 years later. Now, it won't be the same diagram. It'll probably be version 68 of a particular diagram. But that one set of diagrams, this is the operations manual. It's not something you create, go, I'm happy with that, right, I'll throw it away and build the application. This is the ongoing operations manual that the business looks at. Whenever they go, this isn't working, let's go back and change it. They look at the process. It's what the compliance team look at. When they when the auditors come in and go, can you show me how you do drug safety testing? Yeah, let me step you through the process that we follow that is documented. It's the one that senior execs look at to go, if we're going to change the process, what metrics are going to change? And it's the one that the development team might use if you go, we need to change the way the business, the business wants it changed. What systems do we change? Yeah, you go back and take a look at it. You go back and take a look at the diagram.
Interesting. Okay. If you don't mind, what I'm going to do is I have a diagram that I produced, pretty simple one. I want you to take like 2-3 minutes and kind of shred it. So, and the reason why I pulled this up is because this is functional. I can, so just some of you folks out there who are a little bit new to UPN, here is, let me widen the screen a little bit. Here is, for instance, the drill down. So I have a simple process here, but if I click on this little triangle right here, a little window pops up and shows me what's underneath it. Then I can click on it and boom, I'm in a process that's below that first one. And then I got to remember how to get back up to the top, and I think it's just using the tree.
Oh, you either do that or top left-hand corner. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. So anyway, there you go, Ian. There is a little process I created. This was for a scenario. What did I do right and what did I do wrong?
Okay, so the first thing, every line's got text on it, which is fantastic. So you're already ahead of probably most of the people on the planet, which is great news. So second thing is, do all the activities start with verbs? None of them.
No. Oh my God! They got to start with a verb.
There's no better way to say than no, they don't. And then I think the last thing is there's no trigger starting this.
I thought you British folks are supposed to be nice.
I am.
Courteous.
I'm being nice. I'm being polite.
I'm just teasing.
No
verbs. Okay. Always have verbs.
Okay, so number one's verbs. Number two would be, what triggers this, and I know you've got the input. The customer submits the case, and you've got a manual system update. I think the other one is, no, this will work. That's fine. Yeah.
So the first one
is the measure of is this good is not me going, I'll give you 8 out of 10. Is does the customer in this case, or whoever do they understand what's meant to be happening, and are they then able to collaborate, contribute, go, actually, we need to change this. We had a problem with a customer. Let's go back to the process and work out what bit broke down so we can go and fix it. Because that's the purpose of this. It's not an intellectual exercise. It's a practical exercise on, are customers engaged, and do they understand how it's meant to work?
So this first one, customer submits case email.
Yeah.
How would you have worded that?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That is there. It's like, so it's that one, not manual logging of requests, which is passive, which is log request. And then where are you going to log? You're logging your request in a spreadsheet, which is great. So that's log request manually. Next one is manual assigned via email.
Manual assigned via email.
Well, that's fine. But then you've got received in CSR email inbox. Well, that's not a process. That's a state, isn't it? It's received. What are you doing then?
So that should have been said what?
I don't know. Well, back to I'm the analyst here. Tell me what's happening. You've logged a request. It's now gone somewhere. Presumably you're making a decision about where you send it.
Yep.
Yeah. Decide on routing.
Oh, received. It should have just been sent to CSR email inbox.
Well,
this is supposed to be
sent is a state. You have sent it. What's the action? What are you doing? So you've logged the request. Got it somewhere. So actually the text on the line is received in CSR inbox.
Yep.
The activity is then assign and route, because then you're deciding what to do with it.
Okay. So I'm stating something that happened before what I should be stating.
Yeah, what the activity box, you're often putting what's on the line. So that each activity box is, okay, what's the CSR doing now? Are they logging it? Are they routing it? Are they deleting it? Are they responding to it? And there might be some feedback which goes back, it's received, and actually the customer, we don't understand it. So the other thing that happens here is you do the happy path. This is what happens if it all works. That's the happy path. But then you've got the path, which is, okay, well, when it doesn't go well, the customer gave us gibberish. So we need to go back to the customer and request more information. So that may be a line between two back to the box with the picture.
Okay, cool. Well, one of the things I did, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I was creating a current state and a future proposed state, and then I just put a little link down here, and it's like, there you go. Now we got the future state. So we'll get off that before you shred me again.
No, but again, okay. So let me just pick up a point on this, which is there are two ways to drive change. There is small iterative change where you would use the versioning inside Elements to do that, or whatever tool you're using, where you go, this is the one that's signed off, and then the draft is slightly different. If the difference between current state and future state is massive, as this is, absolutely have two different diagrams, because then you can work out what the change management issues are. But if the future state was, we just need to do slightly better on our approval process, the way to do the future state would be probably sign this one off, and then in the diagram enables you to have a draft, so you can then start commenting and suggest working on the draft version, and then when you're happy, you then go, let's move this through to being the signed off version. Okay,
that makes sense. All right, let's go back to share out the one on your end again.
Well, yeah, of course. Share screen.
Yours got pushed off of my sharing area. There we go. Okay.
So let's try and summarize things. Number one, start activities with the verb. And again, this is not UPN necessarily, but this is about how do I get any diagramming better? Start the activities with the verb. Number two, have lines between boxes and make sure you have the text on the lines. Number three, make sure you have a resource of some sort. Who does it? Who's responsible for improving it? No more than 8 or 10 boxes on a screen. And therefore, if you've got too many boxes, drill down. Now, quick proviso there. If you're in a workshop with people, you may have 20 boxes, but at the end of the workshop, you can then start to drill down to the next level of detail. So in the process of mapping, it will get ugly, and then you can tidy it up. And then if you've got the idea of, I know, a paperclip, can I add more information? Can I add more supporting information? And you can add post-it notes and those sorts of things. But also don't get tied into, I have to use a tool. Sometimes it's a piece of paper or a whiteboard might be the right answer. And if you go into the Elements offices, there are whiteboards with this stuff all over the place because we were brainstorming something rather than wanting to commit it into a diagram.
Yeah, I'm all about bite-sized chunks.
Yeah.
It's just easier for people to digest. If it looks too complicated, humans have a tendency to just tune out. Like, I'd rather go to sleep than listen to this nonsense because I don't even understand what the heck he's talking about. But if you keep it in bite-sized chunks, it's just easier to digest.
Yeah, and I think this is also geared up to being able to do it in live workshops. And the act of doing the live workshop means you're starting the change management process. You're starting to get people's fingerprints on it. They were involved in the solution. And you may also spin out some quick wins. I was doing a very senior level workshop for a large construction firm around something called EPC, Engineering, Procurement, Construction. And engineering work, you're designing a port, you're designing a railway system, you're designing something big. So the engineering piece is huge. Then they go on site, which is construction, and then procurement is actually buying all the stuff to get you to build it. And the handoff between engineering and construction is, for some places, you need to, in their world, you need to have an evacuation plan because they're probably building a railway line through the Amazon. So actually, there's some important things from a compliance perspective. Going through the workshop, and I had all senior VPs, all the different departments there, and they went, oh, no, well, we kind of don't do that. We get that done, but at some point. The head of compliance was going, la, 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 la. If you say that again, I'm going to report us and we all go to prison. We must have that in place. And one of the guys came up to me afterwards and said, I've been in the company 30 years. I've never had a conversation where we've really understood how the whole business worked. And that diagram brought it all out. Suddenly the handoffs were obvious. Suddenly I understood what we were meant to be doing. He said it was the most valuable day I've spent in 30 years in the company, which is a kind of sad indictment in terms of the way they're organized. But the point is, this is getting this in a diagram where even VPs, they can all have a conversation and understand it, is really valuable. Because if the top level of the company isn't pointing in the right direction, down at the lower levels of the organization, no one stands a chance. So it's really all about that.
I can't tell you how many companies I've either interfaced with, worked for, did business with, and you're going through some processes of some sort, and the employees are kind of arguing over what's supposed to happen. And my brain always goes to, wait a sec, you guys have been in existence for 32 years. You guys haven't ironed these little things out yet? Like, what? I don't get it.
Well, okay, but you've also got to bear in mind it's very binary. I've got a session tomorrow at the military summit where I'm presenting with Sierra Skiles. And one of the first conversations is that people either get process or don't. It's binary. You're either a process person like me and Walter and you and others, or you don't get it. And anyone who's in a highly regulated industry understands process because they've got to write it down or you get fined. The fines for the FDA, for the pharmaceutical companies, get into the billions of dollars. So anyone who's in food, pharma, oil and gas, construction, financial services, they get process because it's highly regulated. Every other industry, they may or may not. And it's down then to the leaders in that organization. If they get process, then the organization is process oriented. If they don't get process, and it doesn't mean it's bad. Companies, they run purely on metrics. There are different ways of running the business.
When private business is making money, it seems like processes are like, we don't have time for that. We're making good money. I got money falling out of my pockets. Who cares?
Yeah, and also I think it's back to the binary bit. If you're a process person, I look at everything as a process now. And I always have done. If you're a non-process person or you're all into the metrics, it doesn't matter how the job gets done. It's into heroics. What happens is that's the senior level motion. Oh, we're a metrics-driven business. When you get down to the lowest level of the organization and someone's saying, how do I process this? The answer is, well, nothing's written down. And you go, well, why don't you write it down? And what happens is the person in those teams going, we're going to document the process. So they then get their manager to go, we'd like you to review this and check we're okay. And at some point it hits the senior people going, why are you doing process? I don't understand that. And what's the point of that? And therefore, they never get the buy-in for doing this. Senior people go, we shouldn't be doing it. Why are you wasting time drawing all those silly diagrams that no one's ever going to look at? Because they will never look at them. So it's quite hard if the company you're in doesn't have a process focus and you're that process person. My advice is go and find another company.
I see employees all the time complaining, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. No one has told me. I haven't been onboarded. I haven't been trained. I don't know what the process is. I think far and away that most employees of any organization are going to be happier if they have something they can refer to. Like they may not be looking at, the UPN processes map every single day of their job. But if they need to go to something going, I want to make sure I'm doing this right, they can open that up and see it. But it's tough.
Well, if I look at the screen here, let me present the screen.
All right. You're there. There you go.
Okay. Look at that. There's a process diagram embedded inside Salesforce.
Yes.
So suddenly, I want to know how to go and move this deal from SDR qualified to nurture. Okay, it's a process step there. I can understand. I can drill in. I can go, okay, I understand what I need to go and do next. I don't need to phone a friend. I can
now, this is a Salesforce UI that shows how Elements.cloud is embedded in there with the process, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And you could embed. Fine, if you don't have access to Elements, you could draw a diagram using and create a PDF and then embed it. This just happens to be live because it's Elements.
Well, Ian, what I want to stress to some of our folks here is, okay, so we've talked about how to draw boxes and lines and words and shapes and all that stuff. We've talked about that. And in theory, with a lot of platforms, you draw those, you can print them out, you can show them to people, and you're really kind of stuck there. But with Elements.cloud/UPN, you create those processes and you can integrate them with your Salesforce org. Now you have those processes that you gotten signed off on, and now they're live so that users can refer to them within the org.
Correct. And then you can see on the right-hand side, there's a little comments thing. It has a 0 next to it. Click on that. You can then submit a feedback request. This doesn't work for me. That will then get driven into the owner of this diagram who's going to go, right, now let's work out how we improve it. So we're driving that continuous improvement from the end user going, I'm trying to follow this. It doesn't work for me. So
there's a tab there called process. And I tell you, if I'm a user and I'm staring at this going, because sometimes you can, I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem in some way, shape, or form since 2004, but I'm still sitting there at times staring at, a lead object and my mind goes blank, and just being able to click on something and go, oh, that's right. And go back. That way I keep everything the same. We have clean data and things just stay cleaner.
Well, the other thing is you may have built a flow. You ideally designed the flow. If you designed the flow using a UPN diagram before you built it, you can then insert the UPN diagram here. When someone goes, if I kick this off, when I hit flow, I'm going to kick a flow off. It might explain to me what the flow is doing rather than me going, what if I hit a button there? What actually happens? What access is required to view the UPN created? Viewer access. So free view access, so that you would end up with every single user through single sign-on in Salesforce would be able to see this.
Yeah, just think of it as training material or knowledge base. It's just a visual form for you to reference that. And just a reminder, folks, go to Elements.cloud, set up your own free account, and you can play around with all of the UPN stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a playground where you can do everything, including inserting it into a dev org. So you can start to play around with how this stuff works. I mean,
you can insert it into a dev org as well with the free account.
The playground is a full working copy. It's just for a single user. So it's designed so you can do just that. So think about the BA certification that Salesforce has incorporated. A lot of the things you need to do is capture requirements, understand business process. They talk about UPN as the standard for Salesforce and the standard for that certification. So an ability to go and start playing with it rather than using it on the highest politically charged process in the company. Let's go and have a play with some stuff that's somewhere else. That's not a process which you could fix, but it's not. And have a play with it in the playground and start getting used to mapping processes and go back and ask the question, is that a verb? Is there text on the lines doing the things we've done?
So Walter's saying, what happens to my business process when I change that pick list item in my org?
Oh, okay, right. So thank you for that setup, Walter. So the other thing you can do, because you can link a process step to, a requirement or a user story, you can also link it to metadata in your Salesforce org in the metadata dictionary. So you could say, this particular is linked to the lead object, this is linked to this flow, this is linked to whatever the metadata is. That means that when you're thinking about looking in the metadata dictionary, going, I'm about to go and change this flow, what processes is it impacting? Oh, okay, it's affecting the sales process. Oh, I didn't realize it was also used by the professional services team in a different process diagram. If I change it, I now know the implication of making the change. How many times do you change something expecting just one team to be using it, and you find that another team are using it, and you've now broken their process? So the ability to link the processes back to the critical things, whether it's managed packages or objects or flows or any fields, doesn't matter, or a record type. Suddenly you can relate this stuff back. So you can look in one direction going that way, going, I'm on the process, what needs to change? Or I'm in the metadata changing it, going, which processes am I going to break?
Yeah, that's one of the things that kind of drives me crazy about Salesforce is that very thing you just talked about. It seems like even when you get into some of their instructions, here I'm going to bash Salesforce just for a quick second. When you get into their instructions, they go, oh, you want to do ABC? No big deal. Here's a little wizard. Then you click on it. It's like, oh, but you have to go do 5 other things before you can make this happen. So you go do the 5 things, you come back, then you go to the next step. Oh, did you do these other 6 things because you got to do those first? And you're just like, oh my God.
Feels like a process.
Right.
Yeah, everything's a process. But the point about this is, again, it's the reason we're drawing these things is not for our own edification. We're drawing them because we want to get agreement across the teams who do it. And then if we've done it, then we've created the content. Let's use it as training content. Let's make it available to people so that then we can go, I'm following this. And if it doesn't work, it's one of 2 problems. It's either a training issue, we didn't get you to understand how the process worked, or the process doesn't work the way we're working. Let's go back and change the process, and it will be immediately reflected in here because everybody can see it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, but you can't make changes to the actual UPN, and it's going to push those changes to the org, correct?
No, right. We're not. But no, that was a little bit of the plan for BPMN, which is you make a change to the process diagram, you hit send, and it goes and changes all the systems. I've always had a view. You want the analyst in the middle of that going, okay, we've understood the process change you want. Now let's think about how we implement it. I think even with AI, I would not be happy with us not quite phrasing something correctly in a process and it going off and changing the systems and the implications of that. You need someone in the middle going, okay, based on what you want to do, I think it's a record type rather than a checkbox. So, okay, we'll do it that way. Yeah,
that makes sense. That's cool. So So what's next? Show them the difference now. Again, go back to that, if you could, that BPMN plate of spaghetti. And then what does that look like on UPN?
Well, I think this is probably at least 2 levels of BPM. I'm looking at how many boxes there are on there. And you can almost see they've almost grouped it. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 5 areas, because they've got the 3 big yellow boxes and a bit at the bottom. So that's probably a 2-level diagram. And then I don't see any resources on there. I see a lot of lines without text. But there's a BPMN diagram. I get that. I can kind of see what's happening there. Not hard. No. I think the interesting thing now is that we've moved the game on a bit. A couple of things happen. One is GPT will now draw process diagrams for us. Not perfect, but it will do a good first cut, which I think the whole idea of, how do I draw a process diagram? How do I follow the standards? GPT is really good at following the standards. So I'll give you, let me share this tab instead. Okay, so we happen to be in Elements here, but it says create a new map. And I've given it some instructions from customer raising feedback on a bug, through a website, through IT tracking, into Jira, resolve the issue, make an update, inform the customer. So let's go and let it go away. And it's now going to use GPT to go and draw a process diagram for me. That's interesting. So
now you're logged into Elements.cloud.
I am, yes. So it's now off creating that diagram. So what it's doing is it's gone away to the large language model. It's working out from that prompt I gave it, what does raising a ticket mean? So it already knows some processes. Obviously, with any GPT, the more information you give it, the better it is. So it could be, you could give it, the transcript of a customer call. You could give it a proposal that's if you're a consultant. Now, this is taking a while. We've been playing around with some other AI engines where this is happening in 2 seconds. Not now,
this is Chat GPT you're tied into?
No, well, yes, it is. It's OpenAI in the back end.
Okay.
There's
not Chat GPT, but
there we go.
OpenAI.
So it's now drawing some boxes for us. Notice they're all starting with a verb. Every text has got line on them, and it's now putting resources on there.
Straightening the lines?
Yeah, it's done. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So... Right, log ticket, classify issue, assign to a developer, analyze the issue, resolve it, update the app, inform the customer, close the ticket. Now, that may not be correct, 100% correct, but it's given you a good starting point. And obviously, the more detail you give it, the better it is. And
AI, you got to always confirm everything.
Yeah, of course.
But it gives you a springboard with, what I find for creating blog posts or writing this or writing that. It just gives me ideas in which to springboard from.
Correct. But the other interesting thing is we need to go and write some user stories.
Yep.
So let's go and...
No way. It generates user stories?
Out with acceptance criteria.
Wow. That's cool.
So again, the reason I wanted to show this was not to show off how clever we are, which we are, but the point is that, the quality of the user stories is based on how good the processes are. So it's created a user story for me. Hopefully there it is. So if I if I go and edit that one, what it's done is it's gone and created me, share that tab. There's the user story as a support analyst. So it's that one box and some acceptance criteria.
Now, can you just leave it there, or is that something? I mean, I guess, if your team was not using Jira or something, could you just use this as part of your process?
Yeah, of course. Or you can synchronize it with Jira. And you can change this if you're not happy with it. But then what's interesting, so it created one, but you could easily highlight 7 boxes and it will go and create all the user stories, and it will look at the resources. A resource can be responsible, accountable, supportive, informed, consulted. It will then look at that and go, okay, what let's think about the acceptance criteria for each of those resources. And again, we don't like writing processes, but as humans, we really don't like writing user stories, and we're not very good at writing them accurately because we get bored. So to be able to create these user stories, again, first cut, you review them. Then the last interesting thing is, if it's connected to a Salesforce org, it knows all the metadata. Now, let's get it to go and look at your Salesforce org and start thinking about what you might want to go and create or reuse.
That's cool. That's really cool.
So suddenly but with all of this, you need to go back and think about how good your analysis is, because if some of this downstream work is being done for you, it's only as good as the core content. So therefore, none of this is replacing business analysts. It's actually putting more emphasis on the business analysis skills. And the beauty of having something like UPN, which is been quite prescriptive, you can end up with a very clear understanding about what's really required, because you've got everyone's buy-in. Then you can start to build the user stories very quickly. Then you can start to do what I've just done. And when we first started using this, we looked at it and went, no, that's not a very good user story. And we went back and went, actually, that wasn't a very well-defined process. So again, you need to get good at getting this stuff really well defined and be very clear about what the end users need, because then all the downstream work flows off the back of that.
I tell you something that I stopped doing. I stopped bragging about AI. I stopped telling everybody all the little tools I have in my tool bag, to the uninitiated, to the folks who don't get it, don't understand it. Yeah. And now I just do it. They think I'm a genius. They don't, it's like a landscaping guy walking around to all the neighborhood going, I'm using a shovel. Check out, I dug a hole and I'm using a shovel. And it's like, well, okay, now I understand what you're doing. But to the folks that, your bosses and your managers who just don't get none of this, don't even bring it up. Just do your magic. They'll think you're the coolest person on the face of the earth.
Yeah, and I think that's AI. The A in AI stands for augment. Augment means it makes the best things even better. It makes the worst things even worse.
Yes.
So if the input for all of this is actually really well-defined processes, we need to get really good at the business analysis activities that capture those diagrams, because then all the downstream work can flow very, very quickly.
Alexandra's how we enable the GPT functionality. I think it's just kind of always on, right?
If you're using Elements, then you just need to talk to the team about getting the AI piece switched on.
Oh, okay.
From an Elements perspective, that GPT functionality needs to be switched on at an Elements space level. So talk to whoever you're dealing with in Elements, your account exec. Okay,
and then you could also send a support request.
Yeah. But you just hit the website and click on chat. There's an easy way to do that.
Sunita was asking about how they can watch us again. Here's what I'll say. Go to Jerry Rigged Podcast on YouTube. It will be there. And it's also going to live, if you go to my profile on LinkedIn, Jerry Suhrstedt. If you go there, then it's also all of my events. You can rewatch it. So it's always going to be around. And then let's see what Walter's talking about. Give us a shout at success at Elements.cloud.
Oh, that's the answer. How you get it switched on? There you go.
Yeah. Well, so
and again, this is not intended to be talking about a product, but it's trying to encourage people for those people who've been steeped in flowcharts, or they've got a particular diagramming standard, to take a step back and go, how can they improve whatever they're doing using some of the principles of UPN, or even engaging and using UPN in its entirety? But the point is, the world has moved on. There's some different requirements, and therefore I think we need to start engaging people in a different way.
So because you don't want to brag, I'll do it for you. Yeah. So, you're giving the generic politically correct line about how we're just trying to get people to engage on, process diagramming. I'm going to say, in order to do that well and not want to shoot yourself, you want to use a tool that's easy to use and the process is simpler rather than harder. I don't know. I'm a UPN guy, and that's just where I'm at. And I think it's a better, if you're in the Salesforce world, the ecosystem, then to me, UPN is the obvious choice. Obvious.
And you were a BPMN guy, so it shows that people can change, even old people.
Right. Well, it took a while to learn BPMN, and I still, there's parts of it, I like it. If I got to whip out something that I'm going to print out and just show to somebody, people can usually follow that. But UPN, I don't know. It's just, to me, it just makes sense.
It's easy.
You get all the swim lanes and all that visual stuff that kind of just makes your head go, what? Yeah. Especially with folks that don't understand process diagramming. They're looking at like, what are these lane things? Like, what does that mean? You try to explain it, but when it's all contained in a little box, it's like, if I do that, this is who's going to do it, and this is what they're going to use to do it. And it just keeps everything condensed and tied together.
Yeah, and the conversation with senior management is way easier.
Yes.
You can get them to go, okay, this is what we're trying to do. Yeah. This is where it's broken. Okay, box 4 is the problem. The resources on box 4 are these 2 people. I need a workshop with those 2 people to resolve this.
Yes.
Can I have your sponsorship for that? Yes, good. I can get on with it. It's enabling those sorts of conversations. And I think for most business analysts in the Salesforce ecosystem, we're struggling to get buy-in from senior management to why this stuff's important. They've gone to Dreamforce, and someone at Dreamforce says, you just do this, and this, it all happens. And like, right. It's a bit more complicated than that.
Yeah, exactly.
But just to finish off, Data Cloud, hugely powerful. But the one thing about Data Cloud is that it's 80% planning, 20% execution.
Absolutely.
If you don't plan it correctly, if you don't map it out, if you don't understand the data model and you get it wrong, you almost have to start again. So the Salesforce's advice is you've got to get the planning right before you even start building. Very different approach from, say, core Salesforce, where you can just get started.
You can just get started and you can fix anything.
Yeah. Data Cloud doesn't work like that. So if Data Cloud and AI, it's going to force people to actually really drill down on these disciplines.
That's great. Well, we're out of time. Our show is typically about an hour, so I try to keep it to an hour because everybody's busy these days. Thank you, Ian. Man,
my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Really good stuff to think about.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that. You coming on the show today and helping us to understand this whole process mapping thing. Any final words?
Go and practice. Trailhead, Elements Academy. Go and start using the playground. Get good at this. This is business analysis and process mapping is the new superpower. This is a great place to be in terms of your career at the moment.
And then going forward, does this thing have legs, or is it going to die out in a couple of years because of AI?
No, I think we just said no, absolutely not. No, AI is never going to work out. So now, talk to people about how stuff's going to change.
Right.
We all. I started this 38 years ago, and we all went, "Oh, it's going to be dead in 5." No, we're still there. Businesses run on processes.
Well, and farmers thought that tractors were going to kill their business, and farmers are still doing okay.
Oh yeah,
and they got some of the best tractors ever invented. Well, thanks, Ian.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Jerry.
I appreciate all the help, and thanks everyone for stopping in to the Jerry Rig podcast. I'm on LinkedIn. You can go to YouTube. We're there. Just search for Jerry Rig Podcast. You can go to my website, jerryrig.me. And if you want to get some training or help, I also do some of that as well. Just ping me on LinkedIn. Take care, everybody. Have an awesome day.
The Jerry Rigged Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or Google. Business technology for CEOs, managers, and business owners. We're here to deliver insights and strategies without the fluff. This is the Jerry Rigged Podcast.